3000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a skateboarder, artist, and nice guy, Morgan Campbell. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks so much for having me, brother. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, this one's been a little bit of a while in the making, but we finally got it happening.
Yeah, so when was Jaff on the show?
Oh, a few months back now.
5 months ago?
Yeah. Not quite. Yeah, probably, 4 something.
And then maybe I was in Broken Hill when you reached out.
Yep.
But things have stabilised to the point where I could come down on a weekday and you've got a studio now, so it's perfect.
It is, man. That's one of the good things aside from the overheads. But having my own space means that I'm much more versatile with guests and stuff. And I'm stoked to have you here, man.
Yeah, it's been really enjoyable listening to the podcast, watching the podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks for capturing all this gold.
Yeah. Man, I'm just stoked that people are willing to travel down this way and that are willing to give me their time. So that's sick. But let's talk about yourself. Let's talk about your story. I know you're not originally from Melbourne, but you're a proud Melburnian now. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from a little nook of Western Australia inland from Fremantle. So all the suburbs inland from Fremantle. So I guess you would say to a foreigner that you're from Perth, but if I want to get to the nitty gritty, I'm kind of just west of Freo, Willagee, Bicton, Brentwood, Burragoon. Didn't even live there actually. Just reeling off suburbs now. Melville. We moved around a fair bit, but stayed in the same area. Yeah. So, pretty quiet suburban beginnings. And to me, the big smoke was Freo. Yeah.
So, and Freo is only really as a big smoke. It's about 4 streets, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tiny smoke. Yeah. It's just that I would travel there before I, was able to go up to the city, which was quite terrifying at the age that I wanted to go up there.
Yeah. So how old are we talking?
Oh, I think as soon as I started skating, I wanted to get up there.
So I could imagine in the outskirts of Fremantle, there wouldn't have been too much concrete kicking around. You really needed to go and source that stuff.
It was basically, the suburbs were good. There were heaps of spots. There were spots that eventually became world famous, actually, but really? Mainly school spots.
Yep.
Fremantle itself, of course, has these abandoned wool sheds called the wool stores, which wasn't a spot when I started skating, but it soon became one after the kind of parks closed down in the late 80s. And so we had a self-contained scene there. And then I would say, it was pretty much just schools, man. Schools and curbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about when you did venture to the Big Smoke into actual Perth? Was there other skate spots there? Was there a skate park anywhere?
Oh, there was nothing. So it was probably the same here. In the late 80s, where there weren't too many. You had a few. There was Pran. There's a few vert ramps kicking around. Yeah. Bulleen, Snake Run, those kind of things. We didn't have anything.
Yeah.
The closest skate park was 5.5 hours away in Albany, where there's a 70 Snake Run.
And that's like isn't that the most southern point of the mainland somewhere?
Yeah.
Or most southern point of,
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's around, so it's kind of Tasmanian climate, know. And then, but in the city, it's kind of crazy. So in 87, I don't think there would have probably been any private parks, but by 88, there were like 8 or 9.
In WA?
Yeah. Private skate parks in warehouses in around Perth and Fremantle.
Wow.
Because it was so big, everyone thought they could open an indoor skate park and make a killing, but they were all gone by 1990.
Yeah.
So we had this kind of massive spike of transition-based skating, and then it all just disappeared. And the whole time I was like, come skate the streets. This isn't like real anyway. Like we got to hit street spots. That's where it's at. Like I was kind of a diehard.
Yeah.
But then once the Edge closed, which was the big skate park in Fremantle, I managed to get a few mates together and we just hit the streets. Mm-hmm. And then there weren't parks being built until like around 2000.
Yeah. So then eventually, if you're going to follow your passion of skateboarding, there's only so many street spots in Perth and around WA. So you're going to have to go to one of the bigger cities.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they just seemed so epic. All the mags were from here. Mm-hmm. I knew you know, all the names of the Melbourne-based pros, the Sydney pros, heaps of Gold Coast photos because Slam magazine was from up there.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Gold Coast was the Mecca actually
Really?
until I went there. And then I realised it was one of the smallest places. Like it was way smaller than Perth.
Yeah, you thought it was like the California of
yeah,
Australia.
because I
so
mean,
you're like,
you know,
yeah.
it's just like look at all these spots and people and stuff. But yeah, eventually I got itchy feet for sure. But they're saying that we did have incredible spots. It's just and a great scene. It's just that there was no coverage.
Yeah. And what about like shops and stuff? Was there like a handful of shops? Was there places where you could buy real boards, or you sort of?
Yeah, there were probably 10 to 12 shops in the 80s, and then everything tightened up in the early 90s as things died off and the wheels got smaller. And then there were...
Pants got bigger?
Yeah, the what's got...
Pants got bigger?
The pants definitely got bigger. And then there was a shop called Fremantle Surf Sports that my good friend Paul Jarrett ran, and that was the Freo kind of connection. And then up in the city there was Star. Soon after that, my friends Grant Wendy and Brett Margaritas was involved as well, opened a shop in Fremantle called Momentum, and that became kind of our little hub.
Yeah.
We formed a team.
And they're like the
made
Momentum
videos.
skateboards that, like the brand Momentum skateboards, is that what that I...
So there was a Momentum wheel company from
Momentum
Canada,
Wheels,
but
okay.
Momentum Skate Shop's kind of like was a pretty active shop. It was like definitely had a big presence in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. And so at what point do you decide I'm outgrowing this small city, I've got to make a move?
It was more, I was curious as to what would happen if I left, you know. I knew I could just stay there and nothing would happen. And I knew that if I left, I had a chance of some further adventures and maybe actually getting to a point where I could turn skateboarding into something that was more sustainable. But initially, it was, I came to Melbourne in 89. My mum's a writer, not a graffiti writer, but a creative writer. And she came to a conference out in Monash, and I came in 89 with my, you know, PAL set up and, you know, just looking like a little 80s kid, and skated down St Kilda Road and got a map of Melbourne and put all the skate parks in it, and just by myself went to everywhere from Knox to Bulleen to Pran, went to all the parks that existed at the time in 1 week.
Yeah, it must have been like you must have felt like you almost had a car moving from somewhere where there was not much happening, not much public transport, to here with trams, buses, trains.
Oh, I couldn't...
You could be like, I can go anywhere.
No, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the trams. I was so stoked on them.
Yeah.
And then it took me years. I was working a couple of years ago in Clayton, and I was like, oh, Fern Tree Gully Road. Oh. And then I was like, Monash Uni. And I was like, rang up my mum. I was like, hey, did we stay in Clayton when we came here? And she's like, yeah, that's where you were. And I was like, whoa, I went from Clayton to Bulleen. I was like 14. What the hell?
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do to find these skate
Yeah,
spots.
and they're the best times. You know, I remember one day distinctly, went from Clayton. I heard that you could get, you know, good trainers in Dandenong. So I went to Dandenong, caught the train there, and then bought a pair of trainers that were two sizes too big, flopped off down the street and went to Knox Snake Run, which had just been poured. The bowl wasn't in yet. It was just this glistening snake run. And then, you know, headed back to Monash at the end of the day. And I heard stories since that my mates went to Knox because I told them to go. They're like, man, we saw a riot at that skate park. And I was like, you mean it was like, oh, it was like skinheads versus skaters? You know, like full on 30 people brawl at Knox. And you hear all stories about, you know, getting rolled for your kicks on the train. And
sort of
yeah, it was definitely, I was in awe of the size of the place.
Yeah,
sure.
and just you've got access to it with public transport, which you didn't have in Perth. To go
we just
anywhere.
had buses, and they finished so early on the weekends, you know. And there was actually we had a right wing government in the late 70s, early 80s that shut down there's a train line, 2 train lines that cross over. What is it? The Midland Freo, and then there was another one that went to Armidale. and they shut them down because they organised a contract with Renault or Mercedes or some bus company, and they had these. Did you ever have the kind of articulated buses here?
No,
So they're like
I'm aware of.
1.5 times the length of a standard bus with an articulated section in the middle.
Oh yeah,
A bit like a tram.
tram.
So
yeah.
it can go around corners.
We didn't have too many of those. We had more the trams that had that pivoting sort of middle turntable thing.
Yeah, exactly. So those were supposed to replace trams, but it was obviously it's like, oh, I've got these, mate. We can bring these things in and we'll get
Kickbacks.
them. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we didn't even have trains. It was just buses.
So then you're in Melbourne. You're going discovering spots. You're finding new skate shops and that sort of thing. But are you here permanently at this stage, or you're
No,
just...
it was just the longest week of my life. Like longest because I fit a lot in, but it didn't drag on. But I distinctly remember being in Camberwell, not sure what I was doing there, and I saw this spot that has since become actually known to me. Just this bank sticking up over over a fence.
Yeah.
And it's this really skinny flat bank that, it's had heaps of coverage since, but that was my favourite. It was like, I didn't know anyone here that skated, so I was literally just exploring and looking for things I could skate. And then I did hear St Kilda Road was good, and that was amazing. Going down there.
St Kilda Road, before there was skate parks, was like a skate park sort of thing. Like you'd go there, you could spend all day going stair set to stair set, ledge to ledge, and do that all day.
Yeah, and it's not, now I'm like, that's kind of far, but I just skated from Pran, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll catch the tram to Pran and then skate to St Kilda Road and then skate into town. And back then wheels were bigger too, so it was a bit easier to get around.
And that's the thing about Melbourne, man, is if you can do that, you can jump on a tram, probably not, at that stage you were dodging conductors. You could dodge the conductor for like 2 stops, and then you can keep rolling. So that's the beauty about Melbourne. You don't have to be skating the whole way. You can just go a little bit, jump on a tram, keep rolling.
Yeah, they're really convenient. Fantastic.
So then you've got to go back to Perth. You've had a taste of the big city where the skating is, and you go back there with stories with your skating mates that, fuck, Melbourne's where it's at. Like, and you think that's where I want to end up?
Not so much straight away. It was more, I just want to go to other cities.
Right.
And I'd done a self-funded trip with a mate to Sydney with my friend Van. His dad lived there. Then we came down to Melbourne together. So that was, taking it to the next level. I think I did that maybe one more time. And then the next trip that I did was my first tour. My sponsor at the time, Q-Day, paid for me to go to the Goldie.
Yeah. So how old are you? We just set the scene.
I missed a bit. So I did those trips to the Australian East Coast, and that was late 80s, early 90s. Then at the end of it's middle of 92, I saved up and went to California and skated.
At how old?
I was 18.
That's a big move for someone.
My stepdad, I'd met a couple of American skaters in Perth. My stepdad was working at, or my dad, let's just be fair, was working at IBM in San Jose, Silicon Valley.
Wow.
So I just caught a plane there and went and hung out with him in San Jose. And then San Jose was close to San Francisco.
Yeah.
My friend that I'd met in Perth, Lance Provost, came pick me up, drove from Texas. So
what?
That's why today it's not a far.
Drove from Texas.
Yes, drove
to California.
Texas to California.
How far is that? That's like driving from Perth to Melbourne.
Pretty much.
Fuck.
Yeah. And then we skated EMB in San Francisco, and then went down and skated the Power Warehouse, the Venice Curbs.
So hang on. I don't want to cut you off, but we're talking 92.
Yep.
EMB was like, that was the place, wasn't it? That was the shit.
Yeah, so Questionable had just come out. Mike Carroll didn't have green hair like in Questionable. He had blue hair. I was literally seeing lines in real life that I'd just seen in the videos. So,
which must have felt like a fucking world away.
Yeah, it was nice.
Melbourne was a long way away. Then you go to California, like, wow.
Yeah, and then James Kelch came up to me and was going to kick me out because he thought I was Steve Berra. And then, and I've told this story before, but he was just like, hey, you Steve Berra? And I'm like, nah. And I thought about it. I was like, I've got a Steve Berra board. And I had a buzz cut like Steve Berra.
But you had an Aussie
And
accent.
we had the same kind of like brow, you know. And I had an Aussie accent. So as soon as I started talking, he was like, no, you're not Steve Berra. And I was just like, he's like, where are you from, kid? And I was like, I'm from Perth. And he's like, you're okay, mate. Or like, he didn't say mate, but you're okay. You're good to stay kind of thing. Yeah. And so we skated there for the day. And then, you know, Lance was on a mission to get to Colorado. So we just spent a few more days in California, drove down to LA, Power Warehouse. He did his knee, which was bad, did his ACL on the trip. So then I drove with no license. I drove the car because he couldn't drive back to Colorado.
On the wrong side of the road.
On the wrong side of the road.
Did you find that easy?
It was fine. I actually had a learner's permit.
Oh, even just for WA?
No, I got one in San Jose.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But he was absolutely shit-faced in the back of the van. With his leg up. So there's no way the cops would have let it fly. I distinctly remember driving into Vegas. It was pretty cool. Just at night, you know, it's quite a spectacle.
For sure.
Yeah. Shithole, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, once you get off that strip, it's well, even on the strip, there's
once you go outside the casino, it's very hot, even for an Australian desert dweller.
So at this stage, you're getting flowed some boards. You were saying from your Aussie sponsor.
Yeah, this actually was prior to getting free boards.
So you're just going there on a full skate trip, just an adventure because you've stepped out. Your dad is there.
Yeah, and I just the reason that I went over to see what the scene was like because I had dreams of going there.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got there, I knew that I figured I was never going to be sponsored, which was great.
Just because I just standard was too high.
Yeah, and I just, I was big fish, small pond. I'm sure I was a cocky 18-year-old in my hometown. And then it just cut me down. And I went back and tail between my legs and was like, well, got a lot to learn and probably won't do that, but just kept skating.
So it didn't motivate you to the point like I've got to level up. You thought I love skating, but just to be on the.
I definitely wanted to level up, but I knew that by the time I leveled up, then there'd be another level. And I wasn't. The only reason I wanted to do anything with my skating on the sponsorship side of things was because then I knew I could get away with not having a job.
Yep. So how did you fund this previously? You had to just do shitty jobs.
I just worked retail. I worked at Fremantle Surf Sports and would just save up. And it's not like I didn't want to work. I just, education has a big role in my family and I know it's important. And I was about to, go just buckle down at uni, buckle down. And I just figured it was probably the best possible scenario would be able to keep skating and to travel with that. It'd be amazing. But once I got back from the States on that first trip, I didn't really think it was an option anymore, to tell you the truth. But, it didn't stop me from wanting to progress.
Yeah. I think your want for sponsorship, from what I can gather, it came from the right space. It didn't come because you wanted to make a career out of it. You just wanted free boards and an excuse to skate.
Yeah, and boards would cost you. That's what I was going to say. So when I got back, and we're talking 93 now, so not that long.
Yeah.
I was definitely stronger on my board at that point.
And skateboarding's changing a lot then as well. Like in the mid-90s, it's going from a very different spot to where it sort of ends up in the mid-90s.
Yeah, from early 90s to mid-90s. Yeah, and I'm from that era pre-switch, pre-noses, pre-ollies even.
Yeah. Pre-ollies is a hard one for kids to understand.
Pre-flip tricks. Yeah. Ollies, but most people could boneless and not many people could ollie at my high school or whatever.
Yeah.
But so then what was happening is the boards became symmetrical and everyone was skating both ways. So switch has never been my forte. I was like, people must have a hard enough time looking at me skating regular. I don't want to hurt their eyes any more than I do. I'm stronger at fakie. Yeah, I like fakie. I think fakie's pretty boss.
So you've come back from the US, like you said, with your tail between your legs, but also like you're stoked on skating still,
yeah.
but the dream of being a professional in California seems like it's a long way away.
Totally.
So you're just like, I want to skate, but it probably was kind of cool because it made you love skateboarding more, or it made you, if you were going to continue to do it, you knew that you were going to do it for passion mostly.
Yeah, and I just wanted to put, from that point on, for a long time, all I wanted to do was put Perth on the map with my friends.
Yep.
I wanted to put my crew on the map.
Yep.
You know, I got a video camera shortly after that, started filming videos, and then that's what led to me to be able to send footage off and then get free boards. And that was because one weekend I broke 3 boards, and cost price back then for a board was $80.
Yep.
I was paying costs through the shop. I'd earn $100 on a Saturday, so that's 2.5 Saturdays worth of wage. In another 2.5 weeks, I would have broken more boards.
Yep.
I just knew that there was no way to keep buying boards.
Yeah. It's crazy when you think about it. Some things with inflation and whatever,
It's just
right?
ridiculous.
The boards cost $80 then, cost price. Like, you got to think, how much was a Big Mac meal then? You know what I mean? And then how much is it now? So, but some things just seem to stay the same fucking price.
I know. And then I looked up the other day, a pair of Airwalks that I coerced my mother into buying me. They're Airwalk prototypes, black ones.
Pair out there.
Amazing shoes.
Yeah.
Have to have a look after.
Yeah.
They were all black. They were great. Oh, they were black, kind of this. Is that a turquoise?
Yeah, it's a, yeah.
And an orange color. They just had little highlights, you know. But I thought they were the best shoes in the world.
I've
They were
got them
$189 then.
Yep.
And that's a couple of years ago. I looked it up, and that's currently $540.
Which is
In inflation, with inflation taken into
which
account.
is back then, you know, big bucks. Like people would be paying $180 a week rent.
Yeah. I paid,
To put it into perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I paid $29 at my first house.
$29.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then 70, and then, you know, like,
Is this in Perth?
yeah.
This is before the mining boom, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, everything was, I guess, very expensive. So you're just looking at a way to keep your passion from skating flowing and to keep some sort of flow coming in and keep doing it. That's your motivation is just to skate for as long as possible.
For sure. And I mean, once I sent off the video and I started getting free boards, then I guess my imagination went crazy, and I realised that I should probably leave and at least explore and utilise the connections I've got in other states and other countries. And that's, I think, so 93 is probably when I started getting boards, 94.
Yeah.
My first box was a box of Alien Workshop boards.
Which would have been big then. Alien Workshop was fucking...
It was kind of really underground at this point, but I knew it was the shit.
Yeah.
But they had a really kind of odd team of, apart from Deer Deck, no one was really good on the team.
And the branding was so... It's still cool now, I think.
Like this is like the classic alien heads and all that. But then the first series I got was all hand Neil Blender drawings.
Really?
The Notebook series.
Wow.
Because Neil was a huge part of early Workshop.
Yeah. But just I love the whole getting boards type deal.
Yeah.
So did you do the old thing that everyone did back then, which was look at the skate mags, send your VHS to that sort of stuff? Were you doing that? Is that what you were doing?
I knew who the distributors were because I worked at a shop.
So you go straight to the top.
So I didn't go to America. I just went to the distributors in Australia.
Yeah.
And I sent it to 3 and got on 2.
Wow.
I didn't take both. But I got offered one, and then it was a kind of dismal amount of product. It was one board every 6 months, and the rest I bought at cost.
You're breaking 3 a fucking week.
Yeah, and then Jamie Barty offered me 3 boards a month or 2 boards a month, and that's kind of what I needed.
Yep.
So I called up old mate, told him that I couldn't take his Mad Circle board every 6 months. Unfortunately, I love Mad Circle. Twist was one of the artists, you know, the stuff was great. Yeah. Sent back the board. I don't know whether that was a mistake or not, because he's never seemed to like me since. I won't mention who it is.
How many kids do you reckon sent the boards back? So you would have been one in a
not
million.
Me. Hey mate, sorry, I've got this other deal.
Yeah.
But then, Jamie was great. He'd send me the boards like every month, like on clockwork. And then a few months later started getting Etnies. Because he distributed Etnies, and then when they got moved on to a bigger distributor, my name got taken with that as a part of the few guys that were getting Float Etnies went across to the next distribution. So I was like, you know, getting shoes and boards, and that's what I needed, and wheels.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that I think a lot of people don't think of when you're skating. You run through shoes pretty fucking quickly.
It's so expensive.
Yeah, and before there was like, you know, like the loops and, you know, the enclosed laces and all that sort of shit. You'd rip your shoes out and then you'd swap with someone else who would be skating, you know, goofy, and the whole thing.
You could tell a skater from Perth because there was this place called WA Salvage. We're not fancy, but we're cheap, eh? You have to look up the ads. They're amazing. And WA Salvage had this failed product called Selly's Shoe Repair, which was basically shoe goo. Yeah. But about a week after it had been dried, it went brown. So everyone looked like they'd been kicking turds. Yeah. Everyone just had this big brown blob on the side of their shoe. Yeah. But still, you would go through shoes. Like, it didn't save them. The soles would wear through. It was... I just feel so sorry for my mum. Single mum, you know. Kids got this, like, $1,000 a month habit.
Of jumping downstairs and stuff. Did they understand it?
I don't think... She definitely understood it, but it didn't... You know, it was the injuries, I think, that bummed her out more than the expense. Yeah. She's very appreciative of the experience I've had. Yeah. But the number of times that she's picked me up from hospital is, you know, ridiculous. Yeah. So, I think she'd probably prefer that I didn't do it, but she's quite proud and very happy that I guess, followed my heart and followed my dreams, you know.
For sure. And traveling and, you know, you get wise to the world. You get to sort of see other places. You get to experience cultural shit that you wouldn't be doing if you stay in WA.
Definitely. It's, you know, Australia's closed off. It's a bit better with the internet, I feel, but back then it was like being in the 50s.
Yeah. I remember going to Perth in the mid-2000s, and I met a whole bunch of people that had never been to Melbourne or Sydney, never been to the East Coast, heaps.
Yeah, they might have been to Bali.
Yeah, they're probably more, yeah.
But then they don't, it's not like your typical West Australian going to Bali doesn't come back full of like fresh cultural ideals. No. They just go there and become the worst form of themselves.
And come back with a few bintang singlets. So now let's sort of, you decided now, I'm getting to that point where you think you've got to move out of there, you've got to move somewhere else. Is that where we're at now?
Yeah, so we put out a couple of videos through Momentum Skate Shop, or alongside Momentum Skate Shop.
You said you wanted to put your crew on the map, so you got to shout out who the crew was.
Oh, so at the time, I was skating with Kai Stanley and Grantley Miller primarily, who were world class already at that time. They're still absolute legends within Australian skateboarding, and particularly in Western Australia. And then, you know, there was Brett Margaritis already had made waves internationally, but he was definitely someone who I would be always down to film and put in the videos when I could get a hold of him, because he was like lived quite far away and skated more parks than street. And then, you know, there's just all my homies on the periphery of our trio, like Van and Simeon, and we just had a little squad. Yeah. Ross Miles, Mark Winter, Craig White, Josh Maggot.
So I'm guessing because it's a smaller city, the scene's pretty small and everyone knows everyone very well.
Yeah, after the Edge closed, which was the park in Fremantle, there were literally 12 people skating that I knew of in the city.
Wow.
That would skate the city on the weekends. There was 2 crews. It was us, the South River guys, and we called the other crew TOG, which stood for those other guys. And they all ended up being super nice, but we just saw them as very talented and kind of intimidating. So they bid those other guys. Those other guys were there, you know? Yeah. But yeah, initially it was just Kai, Grantley and I and Van, the South of the River boys. Yeah. And we'd go everywhere.
And you told them, you're like, okay, time's come. I'm gonna move over east. They love saying that over there.
They do.
Over east. I'm going over east. Like, you really want to go over east?
Yeah, I didn't move over east. Oh. I went to Glasgow.
Oh There you go. Well,
Yeah.
that's really going to blow their minds.
No, I met someone, followed them to Glasgow, and then went to California. So I'd been to Melbourne on a bunch of Australian tours and that kind of thing, but I never moved. Never moved.
What's the skate scene like in Glasgow? I don't
It was
think
fantastic.
of it. Really?
Yeah. Still is. Obviously, it's hard to skate underwater, but when I got there, it was just mind-blowing. There were a couple of guys in particular, Colin Kennedy and John Rattray, who were undiscovered. Colin was starting to make a name for himself, but Rattray was 16 or 17. And it was like Rattray was basically the second coming of Tom Penny, you know, he was that good. And so all of a sudden I was just on the other side of the world and I had a new little squad. And
how much can you skate there? Like how many months of the year can you skate?
I'd say 4. And then during winter you can still skate because it does dry up a little bit. It gets so cold that it can't rain or barely rains. Then you've got frost, which is a whole new ball game.
And then like sleet and slimy ground. And...
grip tape doesn't stay on. There's all kinds of things that happen.
What a juxtaposition from WA, man.
Yeah, so I went there on the way to the States and then went to the States. Arrived in... I'd been on a tour in Australia with my friend Laban, who rode for Invisible, and he said, you know, you should try and meet up and you can jump in the van and come across the States with us. And I was like, So I got to New York 3 days after they got there. They'd gone and then spent the night there and then caught a Greyhound bus to State College, Pennsylvania, because they'd been skating Woodward. And then the motorhome drove every which way. There was a motorhome with fins on it and big teeth and, you know, it looked like an old fighter plane. And I saw it and went past. I was like, no, that's my ride. No phones or anything.
Yeah. So what year are we talking
This is
now?
96.
Yeah.
And then I went past again the other way. And then I ran down to the T-junction. I was just like, where have they gone? And I saw them go past that way and then that way. And then eventually they came back and, you know, I was just getting ready to catch the plane back to New York. And I couldn't afford to get to California any other way. I only had like a couple $100 with me.
With no internet, with no phones, man, you're kind of like just like literally flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
Making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I maybe had $600, but it still wasn't much. It wasn't enough to fly across the States or even to justify getting a Greyhound. Yeah. And then, I got on that tour. And then by the end of the tour, I'd pulled my weight enough, I guess, in all the demos that I got put on the team on my 22nd birthday.
Wow, what a birthday present.
The 24th birthday would have been,
So you
96.
You hang around on the bus for
22nd,
long enough, you impress them enough that eventually they go, yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, I just was, you know, people on tours are weird. They're like, I just want to be home with my cat. And, you know, like, I wish I was at the hotel. And it's like, man, we're on the other side. Well, I was on the other side of the world. I was so delighted to be there.
Yeah. And you've got a positive vibe that they're digging as well.
Yeah, and I was just loving it. Skating new parks every day, you know. I could stay in the hotel rooms if I wanted to. I could stay on the ground or I could stay in the motorhome, which stunk a bit. But no, I was getting my way across the country, seeing all these places I'd never see again. And I did a similar tour, but the full lap a couple of years later. But after that, so 96 got a factory sponsorship direct. With Invisible. Don Brown from Etnies had helped me out a fair bit too. He was always looking out for me at the comps and sending me shoes in California. And
so at that, because Etnies originally started in the UK and then they kind of went into the US market and that's when you're sort of become a part of it?
Yeah, so when I got on, it was just Etnies, but I remember being at the World Championships at Munster in 96. So this is before I went to America.
Yeah.
I went there from Glasgow. And Don Brown was like, hey, just let you know, like, they'd already started S. Yeah. So Etnies had already had the big boom, like the Tom Penny arrival in 94 had all gone down. S had started, it was very elite. No one ever expected to be on S. Maybe I'd been starting to get S actually flow in Australia. But then I knew once I was overseas again, I'd be on Etnies for sure. There's no way I had the caliber to be on S. And Don told me about America. He's like, we're starting this other thing because we're having problems with Etnies. We're phasing out Etnies and we're starting America based on the E of Etnies in America. And I was like, oh, cool. He's like, you might, end up on America. And I was like, cool, whatever, like, I'm down. The shoes are all good. And then I think there was one point where I was on America in America, on Etnies in the UK, and on S in Australia.
Yeah, wow.
Very confusing.
So
my feet were very confused.
but you've needed more shoes, so that's
The Etnies were so thick at the time too. Like.
But I think was that a copyright issue because Etnies was too much like ethics or something like that?
Maybe it was, yeah. I remember hearing something like that.
Yeah, so they had to change.
Wasn't it called something completely different? I think it was called that first.
It was called ethics originally.
Yeah, then it got turned to Etnies. And then...
when they tried to go to America, I think there was something else that was similar to...
Yeah, they were there and they were established and then they were having troubles. And Etnies got phased out for like only a year or so and then it was back. And then it became back as more of a cross all action sports kind of brand, with moto and all that. And
that term action sports
is
sorry. It's just like the X Games and like everything thrown in. It's like when it's like extreme. Like,
yeah, at least it was. It's better, slightly better than extreme.
Extreme action sports.
Action.
Okay, so then you're doing laps of the US. You're a long way away from home. You're skating. You're getting put on teams. You're actually making some bucks, enough to keep you floating and rolling around.
On tour, you'd make a little bit.
You get a per diem, like they give or they feed
per
you.
Diem,
and that sort of thing?
I think you get $20 a day per diem,
and they put you up,
or $15 a day per diem and $20 a demo or something like that. I think it added up to $40, something close to $40.
And you're paying for your accom and everything.
Yeah. So that's nice.
So you're living for
sure, for sure. Like one time in '98, I arrived with $1 and then spent 3 months in America and left with $3.
And is 3 months the max you can?
That was the max you can. Yeah.
So when you got there with $1, they must have been like, "What are you doing here? You skateboarding?"
No, and they missed the page in my passport with all the American stamps on it too. I remember just like, if they see that page, they're going to ask about my money. And I just spent all my money in the UK and gone to America. I knew I was going on tour on the first day, so I knew I'd have money when I started.
Yeah.
But it was just a matter of getting through customs. And then the guys just, pre-digital hookup. Looking through and I was like, oh, the next page is the one. It's got all the US stamps on it. And he just missed it and then asked me a question and went bam and stamped. That feeling of just like the bam. It was quite tough because you're trying to skate at such a hard level. You're sleeping on floors. You're trying to do, your best stuff and you don't have much money. But you probably do the best skating you'll ever do in your life. Most things are like that, right? Art's like that as well.
Yeah.
People often create their best work when they're struggling.
Backs against the wall.
Yeah. Did
you feel like you're an outsider being an Aussie dude? Like, was there any other... Obviously, there's a few Aussies around, but yeah.
No, it was good because I had Matt Mumford in San Diego. He was writing for Invisible when I got on and he had my back big time and has had so many people's back. So he was like the Aussie consulate kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you would stay with him. And then at the time, it was very novel to be Australian. So people were very friendly and really open-armed. But I never felt quite right in California, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a daunting place.
Yeah, I had a lot more fun in Europe. I feel in Europe I can just be myself.
Yeah.
And so, it was back and forth, Glasgow, Cali, Perth. The longest period I spent away was 9 months without going back to Perth. Because once I was on Invisible, I'd start to be able to get fares paid as well.
Wow, that's cool.
Which was nice.
All the way back to WA.
Yeah,
cool.
A couple of times. And then I moved back from all that in '98. And then Invisible, that was my board sponsor that I was then about to turn pro for, went under.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, that was a lot. I just filmed a video part for them. I'm like back in Perth. I just did that whole thing for a couple of years. And now maybe I won't worry with this whole thing. Yeah. And I started to went back to uni in '98. Started in '99.
What were you studying?
Communication studies, multimedia studies. And after a year, I realised towards the end of 19 or halfway through, I realised that I wasn't happy there because I'd just seen so much, and Perth's it's like a country town in many ways.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than that, but not that there's anything bad about a country town. But I'd done all these things and knew people on every corner. Like, it's not you just run into people everywhere that you know.
Yeah.
And then you've done things with your life, and then there's tall poppy syndrome, and I just wanted to be in a place where I was more anonymous and in a bigger city.
Yeah. And your eyes had been open to what
Yeah.
was out there, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of 99, I was about to do an exchange program to go to Vancouver to do some study over there. I tried to apply for a uni in Bristol because I wanted to live in Bristol in England, but I got into one in Van and was getting ready for that. And then I got a job in Sydney I was making content for a skateboarding website called K-Grind. It was way before its time.
Yeah, right.
Very short-lived. It died a few months later, but they paid for me to move to Sydney, and I started there on a decent salary, and was like, oh, this is cool. I can still just skate on the weekends. And
the internet is now sort of finding its feet in the late 90s, where when you are back in Perth, you're seeing all this stuff you're missing out on as well.
yeah, but there was no real, like, you could find some photos on there, but everything was pretty small.
Yeah.
I don't even know if
There would have been forums, a lot of skate forums and that sort of thing.
maybe, yeah, they were there, but we're talking 5 years pre-YouTube still.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew what was going on everywhere, and it felt I was a little bit claustrophobic being back in sleepy old Perth.
Yeah.
And musically, I found it really hard. I found it hard going out, like, because I'd just seen so many good gigs particularly in Glasgow.
No one goes to Perth.
No,
Even
it's
when
so
they do a
expensive.
Melbourne,
Yeah.
Sydney, East Coast tour, often they don't go to Perth.
Yeah, I
at all.
think that because the skateboarding was still there, and I still had a camera, and I still had my mates, and we had spots. But things like other parts of culture were lacking, I felt. But yeah, so then ended up moving to Sydney in 99. My family had moved here in 98, and I was going back and forth, Sydney, Melbourne, and then
That's cool. You get a bit of both.
yeah. But I just felt more comfy down here, a bit cheaper, and had a lot more friends, easier to make friends, better transport system.
Yeah.
It's not as beautiful. It's not your postcard city, but it's great.
easier to get around. Lots of skate spots and
So good.
good cultural hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of turned my back on the whole American thing, but by 2000, 2003, Tony Hawk's games come out.
Yeah, man.
Skateboarding's big,
Huge.
and even Australian riders were getting looked after.
Yep.
So
I remember, like, at school in that late 90s, I was still at school, and I skated actually skated, but every kid had a skateboard, even if they didn't really skate. You know what I mean?
yeah, when was that? Sorry.
We went to Sandy, or I went to Albert Park and then Sandy, but
Yeah.
like at that point in time, when Tony Hawk comes out, every kid had a skateboard, even if they just did a little acid drop off the curb. It was like everywhere.
Everyone played that game, right?
Yeah, it made people skate that didn't skate previously. So there was the kids that actually skated and had skated for 10 years before that, and there was the kids that now everyone just had a fucking skateboard. Strange time, and it must be interesting for you who had just seen this go.
Well, yeah. Tony Hawk had come to Perth. We did some demos with him in 96, so just before I went away.
Yep.
And this is when I started to realise that maybe I had a chance.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was looking for a Rusty rider and an Airwalk rider, and I've looked in every city, and I want you to ride for Rusty and Airwalk, like as our Australian guys.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I'm getting some clothes off Russell Athletic, and I really like my America shoes or Etnies. I was on Etnies at that point. And so I said no, but in the nicest way. Yeah. And, he was cool. He's just like, call me when you get to the States.
Yeah.
It was just really nice about it. But that was definitely a boost, getting a nod from him. And then also just it was really nice seeing him performing street demos on the jankiest setups at a big day out. 5 years later, he's like in a private jet.
Yeah. Did you hit him up when you went to the States next time?
I did. I was like, hi, do you remember? Yeah, cool. Can I get the Rusty team manager's number? Yeah, sweet, thanks. Bye, Tony.
But at least he gave you the
Yeah,
time
I was
of
like, I
day.
needed an excuse to call him. But at that point, I was kind of getting flowed stuff from Rusty. But a little bit later, like when I was in Sydney, and part of the reason I ended up in Sydney was I was writing for Juice clothing.
And they were huge back then,
yeah.
man.
I'm lucky, man. Juice then and then Butter now. It's like they're the two
Big
struck the
Sydney
jackpot.
yeah.
Yeah, so lucky. Guy was so good to me. Guy and Rich from Juice.
Yeah.
They were really cool. And they would send us like on proper international trips and stuff.
Yeah.
Like Chima and Kale Nuski and
Yeah.
Jeff Williams.
People were selling bootleg Juice
Yeah.
hoodies. So
And
that's when you know you've made it.
Yeah, the blank ones too.
Yeah, Vic Market had had fake blank and fake Juice hoodies. I remember.
The Juice ones were available in pink. And I remember, I was like, damn, I wish they made pink. But the embroidery looked so bad on them.
And they had like that mesh, like basketball singlet hood sort of bit, and you're like, yeah, that looks a bit off in pink.
Yeah, that was, blank, definitely, both of them. There was at Paddy's Market in Sydney and down here at Vic Market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Guy being upset about it, but I was like, it's kind of an indication. And they were 8% of a big haul.
Yeah.
So big haul at the markets, 8% was Juice.
Wow.
So it means they had a pretty good market share that time, I guess.
Huge.
And Michael Davidson was also on Juice, who was like the Sydney legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in good company there. It was some good times.
Yeah. So you at this stage you're still in Sydney, but you're coming back and forth.
Yeah, so when I got on Juice, I had just landed back in Perth for my travels. Guy got me the job in Sydney because he didn't want me to go to Canada. Cheeky. He thought I'd never come back. So he was a big part of that. And then I was writing for Globe, ended up on Globe, and they were down here. So it just made sense to be down here on so many levels.
Yep. And your family's here.
My family was here. That was the main thing. My mum and my little sis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they moved to not far from where I'm living now. They were just near Edinburgh Gardens in North Fitzroy.
Yeah. Fitzy Bowl.
Yeah, Fitzy Bowl was there.
Yeah. A good place to be. So I guess now you've released your ties with Etnies America, the E brands, and you're on Globe.
Yeah, it didn't. I think that was a straight transition. Yeah, I think I just went from getting flowed shoes basically to getting a decent like monthly paycheck.
Yeah.
So, and at that time it was when I was still studying. In that year I was studying, so it was amazing to get paid for skating at that point.
Yeah, because that's a big level up from the per diem to actually get a check, and
Yeah.
and I guess you can show your mum. You can be like, look at this. This is actual money.
I'm paying my rent. And I think my rent, just to put it in perspective, then I had a 1-bedroom unit in the middle of city of Perth, and I think it was $120 a week.
Yeah.
Different now, but
Yeah.
So if you're getting, I think it was like added up to between Globe and Juice. Oh, it would have been probably just under $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
But it was still paying my rent.
Yeah, and affording you ability to skate. You've got, people that are going to take photos and film for you when you want to as well.
Yeah, and just the opportunities of coming over, like, hey, we've got this thing. Do you want to come to Melbourne? Like, yep. Like, never say no to a flight.
Yeah.
Tried not to.
Try not to. And this whole time, we've talked about your passports and that sort of thing, but are you journaling? Are you drawing? Are you sort of any kind of creative pursuits as well, aside from the skating?
Yeah, so what I started doing was I had these, I would have a travel journal. I think the earliest, I would just start it off writing in my journal. And then I've seen little glimpses of collage stuff in some of the early ones, which are from like my first American trip and all that. Yeah, it's just funny. Like I went here, I did this trick, saw that trick, draw a photo of a picture of the skate park. It's like, wow, I was really boring. But then a little bit later, I decided that I thought that maybe the stories that I was writing or the entries were a bit like I would just read them and then that's all I would get from it is just those words.
Yeah.
And I started just putting found objects in them. And so I wasn't allowed to write in them. And so I've got these books and have to use a spiral ring bound book.
Yep. To give you
So
some
it can
more.
expand.
Yeah.
And I would put maps, kids' drawings,
Bus tickets, shit like that.
tickets, flyers, all that stuff that people come home with and put in a shoebox. I'd just do it like at the end of every couple of days, just get out a glue stick. I was allowed glue stick, sticky tape, no scissors.
When you say you're allowed, these
They
are
were
the
my
parameters
rules.
that you put on yourself.
My rules. Wasn't allowed to write in them. If I really wanted to write in them, I could write on a bit of paper and then stick it in.
Oh.
But I wasn't.
Bend your own fucking rules.
Yeah, I was like, is that all right? Yeah. So, those things, I've got about 15 of them.
Yeah.
And they're, I think they'd be, aside from my family and maybe some old family photos, they'd be the first thing I got out of a house. Like, they're more important to me than anything, my first pro model or anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a full snapshot of graphic design of the era.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, every time you look at a page, you get a different memory.
Yeah.
Because
And when you're well travelled, you can differentiate. Oh, that was that time I went here, and then I went there because you've been to that city 5 times.
Yeah.
You can sort of remember.
Yeah, totally. So they're pretty fun. So that was definitely a creative release and a lot like a nice thing to do when you're in transit or at a laundromat, a cafe. You know, just
Tour
kick
bus.
back, get out your bag of stuff,
Yep.
start ripping things up. Yeah, not so good on the plane. It's a bit too noisy,
Yeah.
but I have done it on the plane.
So was this artistic pursuits purely analog? You're not using computers and doing any sort of digital design. It's all just hands-on physical stuff.
Yeah, they're just all like bits of paper and plastic stuck in, rubbish. Tickets. Probably favourite 2 things to put in there would be like a found kids drawing. I find that quite amazing.
Right.
And also when if you were giving me a map of how to get back to the city from here, pre-phones, you know, drew a
On
little
the back of a napkin or something.
Love those. Man. The napkins were great actually because you could put in a map or whatever, a flyer. And once you glue the napkin over the top, it becomes transparent. So it's like this. It's another layer.
It's another layer. There you go. So the collage thing is starting to sort of simmer in there. You're thinking about, this is something kind of cool that I can do, but it's just in the background because skating is what it's all about.
Yeah, and I would only do it when I travelled. So it wasn't something...
Oh, you wouldn't do it at home?
No.
Right.
Yeah, wasn't interested in anything I found at home.
He's a Macca's rapper.
I kind of wish I did some, but I just haven't. I don't think I've even done any. Oh, I did a Sydney one once.
Yeah.
You know, but I've never. It's more for me about capturing a completely foreign environment and the graphic design in that area at that time, because you do get a snapshot of graphic design because of everything's been designed.
And trends,
flyers,
yeah.
trends, tickets, subway maps, of course.
Yeah.
One of my favourites.
So do you think... I think any kid who's skated has sort of come up with their own skate brand or their own, graphics that they wanted to have. And are you thinking that this is evolving into something like that, or this is just purely a personal journal sort of thing?
It's purely personal, and I have respect for graphic design, but I've never wanted to be a graphic designer or a designer.
But I think anyone who's has been involved. Did you have a little pretend skate thing in your head?
When I came back and Invisible went under, I thought about starting a board brand, but I've always known that it's a lot of work and it might actually take away. The older I've gotten, the more I've realised how having a company within your subculture can take away from your pure love for the activity.
Yeah.
So,
like the Flaz episode, he
spoke about that.
Yeah, and he sort of said like it's everyone's dream, but it's just such a grind.
Yeah, it's hard. So I had my idea for a company was electricity, but with 2 C's. So I was Electric City.
Oh.
So and Electric City Skateboards it would have been.
Yeah.
But that was real flash in the pan, like little idea.
Did you draw up a logo and stuff?
Yeah, I think I've got like a sticker that I had my mate made.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's shocking. I designed it. And then, aside from that, I had a video magazine that started when I was in Sydney called Liquid Pixel. So that was my own little thing.
Yeah.
And then like I've had magazine titles, but never like a clothing brand or a board brand or whatever.
Yeah. But they're just other artistic endeavours within the skateboarding realm.
For sure.
Yeah. That you just don't think you wanted to pursue because it gets in the way of what it's all about, which is riding a fucking skateboard.
Yeah. And I enjoy doing things that help uplift the greater skateboarding community, like a magazine does or a video does. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of a platform for everyone to be a part of.
Yep.
And, you know, I would have parts in my own videos. I don't think I ever gave myself the last part.
Yep.
I'd always make sure that I was like second last or like in the middle or whatever.
Even if you were the most prominent sort of skater in
I
that
just
video,
couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's too self-promoting.
Yeah, it's like, check me out.
But then it sort of brings me to another point. I think a lot of people think that if someone is a professional skateboarder or if they're a career, they've skated for most of their life, that they are making a living on it. But the reality of that is probably it's a couple of very small % of these professional type skateboarders. Everyone else has to hold down a full-time job, whether it's within the skateboarding industry or without, you know?
Yeah, especially now. I'd say 80% of pros in America now would have a full-time job.
Yep.
And then, you know, I'm just pulling that out of thin air.
But
and I'd say when I was there in the 90s, it would have been a much bigger percentage that were making an income from they're living off skating.
What do you attribute that to? That there's more pros, there's more companies,
more pros, more companies, and only a few prevalent shoe companies.
Yeah. So
people
the shoes,
the shoe thing, you know, and I left skate shoe brand for corporate shoe brand. Actually, I got kicked off, so I didn't really leave on my own accord. But I made it was a long, hard decision as to whether I rode for Adi now. Mm-hmm. I rode for Nike for 7 years. But when I was getting on Nike, I was like, is this what I want to do?
Yeah. And
selfishly, I put on the shoes and I was like, oh my God, this is so much better than what I've been in for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Just because that's what they've done for so long. Yeah. And there's so much technology involved that the shoes actually seem to be better for your feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's happened with the industry is everyone would have a shoe check, a clothing check, board, wheels. Board and wheels very small compared to the clothing and
bearings.
The shoe. Yeah, maybe not a check, maybe just some bearings. Yeah. Truck check, no. Not many people getting paid for trucks.
If you get an ad in Thrasher or some shit,
you're stoked. Yeah. And like the top guys might get like a retainer or whatever on Indie. Mm-hmm. At least this was then, you know. But then once you phase out, there weren't many clothing brands, and because skaters were wearing clothes from all over the joint, sportswear, streetwear, op shop wear, you know. There's starting to be a few more now again, but there's been a long period where if anyone's getting anything, it's like good luck getting anything from one of those sports shoe brands, money-wise.
Yeah.
And then they might be getting a little bit from their board sponsor, but it's not going to, it might pay one of their bills.
Yeah.
It's not going to pay their rent. So a lot of people are working, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess if you can get a job within the skate industry, you're kind of lucky because there's only so many of those jobs that go around.
There's only so many of them. And yeah, for a long time, I worked in different facets of the industry. I've tried so many different ones: skate park design, skate tuition, videography, writing, magazine editing. And they're all great jobs. Again, don't pay super well. But when you're completely surrounded by something, it's like being if you work at a skate shop or any specialised shop, you hear so much like chitter chatter about who did what and who's this and this person's nah and all that. It results in clutter in your brain. Yeah. And when you go to do the act, you've like got all that background noise. Yeah. Whereas if I work elsewhere, then when I get on my skateboard, I have clarity, you know?
And it becomes a release from what you're doing the rest of it. So you look forward to skating.
Yeah.
You're not smothering yourself with this thing and killing it because, the love for it.
Yeah, exactly. You're not like, they said that was a stinking trick or whatever in the background of your head. You know, if you listen, like anyone that's worked in a skate shop will tell you it gets tough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good in the long run that people can still go on trips. They might not be able to progress as much because they have to work. But at the end of the day, when their career's over, and, you know, Lance Mountain came up with the term disposable heroes, or, you know, maybe it was Stesic, can't remember. But you are literally a disposable hero. So you'll be 32, you're not the cool guy anymore, or it was even younger in the 80s and 90s. We're talking like dudes in the mid-20s. But it's even more dangerous if you're in your mid-30s or, you know, God forbid, a skateboarder getting into their 40s. But when that happens and the salary ends, you're kind of left high and dry.
And you've also had a lifetime of doing whatever you want, whenever you want. Drinking, smoking weed and not being that responsible, but the checks are coming in. It's going to be a wake-up call when they stop.
Yeah, it's like, so what have you been doing this whole time, you know? And then, yeah, so it can be really challenging. I can see why there's massive problems as a result. Yeah. So I'm glad that I always had to have a side hustle, because then when the checks ran out, I was able to kind of, at least I had a CV, you know? Yeah. That wasn't a skate one.
No. And so this other pursuits that you've had a few different ones, but what are you currently doing now? Or what ones were you doing then that you thought this is a really cool departure from skateboarding?
Well, I just knew that I was editing a magazine's great. Yeah. Very time consuming and stressful.
And is there with the internet and with the
did a bunch of internet work? Yeah. Yep. So that's also what happened is things were like media forms were dying. Yeah. You know, so the magazine form is that's pretty hard to rein right now. Yeah.
And you said that K-Grind website was probably really ahead of its time.
Oh yeah, they had video, right? But the player was 130 by 260.
Like a thumbnail.
Yeah. Yeah. Of like 3 pixels having a little dance. Yeah. That's ridiculous. And it wouldn't work on dial-up. It needed a cable connection. So that was way ahead of its time, and there was also a big .com crash in 2000. So it literally ended overnight.
Yeah, that was really funny that time, because it's so weird to think of now that the internet did crash, sort of. Not crash, for people that don't really remember, it didn't die, but it just...
No, it was still there.
It was still there, but it
was still
just...
a search page.
Yeah, people just... They said it was a boom and it was a bust and it was, you know, it wasn't going to take off. And then it kind of came back, obviously, bigger and better.
Yeah, I think what happened is people got excited and they overinvested in it with no returns coming through. So this K-Grind incident, they had a surf channel, skate channel, snow channel.
Extreme, what did we call it before?
Yeah, all the action sports.
Action sports, there we go.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my mate the other day. So I worked with this guy called Glenn, and he worked across all 3, but was kind of, his heart was in snow. Yep. So we called him XG, which is short for Extreme Glenn. He was a great guy. I think he's an app developer in New York now. But there was a music channel. There was a gaming channel.
And that's fucking ahead of its time.
There were like 3 or 4 other ones. And basically what the guy did, John Peters taught Macquarie Bank out of 10 mil to invest, and went and headhunted the best person in the country to head each channel. So the fact that I got the job was massive, you know, like they'd had a look, and I'd done some writing already, so they knew that maybe I could do it. But some of the other people were incredible. Yeah, like there was a hip hop channel, and yeah, they were just masters of their realm. So there we were, this little hub of editors, and we had a director who I'm still friends with, and he would just, you know, like talk to us about our stories that we're working on for the week, and then we'd just go and do them, and then, you know, I'd come down to Melbourne and film the Reynolds, the America demos at sale yards, and then film them in Sydney, and then, you know, make video pieces, and then you can watch the 3 pixels dancing around and see like Chad Barty's mullet.
Was it cool coming to Melbourne and seeing like the sale yards in its heyday and then going to go somewhere else and experience Sydney's culture at that sort of same time?
Oh,
Because they had the pit, was it a similar sort of thing? Or there was their hangout?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely like the epicenter. But the cool thing about the sale yards was where it was. And I filmed a line purely to show my mates from overseas that you could skate the library
Yeah.
and do a few tricks and hit the library bank and then putt down the street, carve in, and then do a backside ollie on a quarter pipe.
Yeah.
And just where that was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I first saw that, you might know when it began, but I saw it in 97.
I think 96.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. The
Yeah,
skate
'cause-
nerds will pull me up on that.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't think it was much before when I first
No.
saw it. But then, yeah, seeing, fully fledged demos there. But, the last time I went there, Chet Thomas accidentally tripped me over and I hit my noggin and went to hospital, had a grand mal seizure, got put in a coma,
Whoa.
nearly died. And that was the last time I skated. So,
Were you in the way?
nah, he was in the way.
Really?
I was dropping in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were just getting warmed up for the
One of the
demo.
bigger quarters.
Yeah, I dropped in on a 6 foot quarter,
Yeah.
and then his toe was at the bottom. So just dropped in, pumped, ready to do a trick over the fun box, and then
Yeah.
and I'd already had a bad head injury the year before, so I was, very concerned about the ferocity that I hit my head with,
Dude.
and went straight to St Vincent's, and then woke up. Steve Gourlay, Scott Gibson, my mum, Chet Thomas, and I was hooked up to all these machines. And I was like, what happened? And they're like, do you want to have a look in the mirror? And I was like, sure. They showed me in the mirror and
Red shit all over you.
I just had this massive hematoma here because I fractured my sinus, and which is this bone, I was told. And then the eye was, when you see someone's eye and it's just full of blood. It's very graphic. But we don't know whether the head injury, the head butt from sale yards, caused the grand mal seizure or whether I just rolled out of my bed because they didn't put the
Side thing.
sides up on the bed.
Oh, dude.
Didn't sue.
Well,
Missed the window.
Yeah.
I thought about it, and then someone just talked me into having a go at it because they're like, they have such big insurance,
missed a shot.
Yeah, it's all right. Those kind of things, they leave a bad taste in my mouth. But yeah, sale yards, I try not to remember that, but I did see some fantastic
Yeah.
demos there.
And around there as well. There was demos that would make their way out of there
Yeah.
because of the spots. I remember dudes would ollie that little laneway between the library and there, and they'd be like, well, the demo was here, but now all of a sudden there's 300 kids on.
And then you'd go across
Swanston
the road
Street.
and Ken the Dongaloo is having a battle with Dexter at SMC Mini Ramp.
Yeah, that is cool. I bumped into Dexter the other day, and I said, "Man, when are you going to do the show?" And he's like, "It's not for everybody."
Yeah.
But I'd love Dexter to come on.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but yeah, what a spot in Melbourne then at that time, man! Like so much cool culture, so much shit going on.
Yeah, and you could go sit at the bar across the road and just watch.
Yeah,
You know the name of that bar? It's a good bit of skate trivia.
the one I was too young back then.
Yeah, of course.
Right, so the sale yards, I didn't turn 18 until 2001 or something. So the bar across the road, I don't know which.
Yeah,
one
there was just a bar, like a classic dark Melbourne bar. Not the Laundry, it was directly across from the sale yards.
on Lonsdale or on
On
Swanston.
Swanston, yeah. So you could watch from above kind of thing through the window.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. It's a little bit before my time.
And you could get VB long necks. We were thinking that was funny. It's like a long neck at a bar? Like, where are we?
Right, so at this point in time, you find yourself in Melbourne permanently now.
Yeah, I was based here, and if I was to go away for an extended period of time, my furniture would stay here.
That's
In
how
storage.
you gauge it.
So I think home is where your storage unit is.
Oh, there you go.
But no, I when I moved here in 2003, I think it was, start off, I knew that I'd finally found a place to settle down.
20 years now.
20 years. I did a lap that year choosing the city I was going to base myself in, a world lap. And my hot favourites were Berlin, Montreal and Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then my family wasn't in the other ones. And our winter's really mild.
Yeah.
Berlin and Montreal are great cities in the summer, but I think they're quite brutal in the winter.
Not Barcelona. A lot of skaters say Barcelona's like...
Oh, Barcelona wouldn't be a place I'd like. I wouldn't like to live there, I don't think. I love going there, but I'm in full skate rat mode when I'm there, and it's a very touristy city, and also it's different kind of heat there. You know, it's hard. It's a hard place to be in summer. I can imagine with all the tourists and all the heat, it'd be hard. I like kind of gritty cities.
And Montreal, you couldn't skate all year round, could you?
No. I worked it all out once. I made my hot favourites, and I was like, bat barrel. I mean, usually cities with bad weather are great cities.
Yeah.
But then there's the catch of the weather. And then, you know, the whole thing about Melbourne is everyone's like, oh, how do you do it with the weather? It's like, well, have you looked at what's been happening to other cities now? It's actually not that bad here.
Even if it fucking does rain, you might be able to skate that afternoon.
Well, look at today.
Yeah.
It was beautiful when I got down here.
Yeah.
It was winter in the city this morning.
So you're starting to travel a little bit more. You're going back to your journaling. Is that artistic stuff isn't happening at home? You're still just only doing artistic stuff when you're on the road and traveling?
Yeah, funnily enough, the collages were still happening, and every time I went away, I would get an empty book and come back with it full. They're usually about a quarter of the width on the spine than they are at the front. They're like end up being quite heavy.
Fans out.
It really fans out like a peacock.
Peacocking your art. So with that sort of stuff, you're thinking about maybe doing something else with it. At what point do you think I could make this into a zine? I could start making my own art, it was, you know.
I met a guy. It was not collage induced, but I met a guy called Jack Pam in probably about 2006. And we decided to start a West Australian skate mag together. Mm-hmm. What induced it was I was with Lance Dawes and some Americans skating Rolling Stone High in WA. And he was like, how come Perth, it seems so far from Sydney and Melbourne, how come it doesn't have its own magazine? And I was already living in Melbourne. And I was like, no, it doesn't have its own magazine, but it probably should. And then I'd been in Berlin where a guy had a magazine called Anzig Berlin, and it was a free colour, glossy, staple bound magazine. And I could tell that after working in print media several times leading up to that point, I knew it was very hard to get to sell units and to get costs covered by selling your mag because you're chasing up all the skate shops or whoever's stocking it for money, you know. And it's like $12 here, $12 there. So we thought we'd bankroll it off advertising and make it free.
Yeah.
And it was already... Sorry?
No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's kind of like the Vice magazine model sort of thing. You
Totally.
can give it away.
Give it away.
But it was good quality.
Nice thing. And pocket, because you're a skater, you might not have a bag. You can get it out, read it on the train, whatever. And, you know, we're going into digital times here. We're in them. The internet has landed and it hasn't broken yet. So we're fighting with that, but print is king in my eyes. I love printed photos and flicking through something tangible. So Jack, who's an artist, and Luke Thompson, who is the Perth skate photographer, and I started this thing, and it was called Staple. And we did 8 issues all up. It just came out when we were ready. It was like attempted to be quarterly, but it never was. It was like 3 times a year. Try.
Are we talking full colour, or is it like DIY kind of monotone?
Full colour.
Awesome.
Yeah, printed like by printer.
Yeah.
And we'd make maybe 4,000 and then just distribute them around all the skate shops in the country. And we did that for 2008 to 11.
Yeah. Is it self-sustainable to the point, did the ads generate enough revenue to pay for the printing?
Basically, I'd work on it almost every day and then we'd sell the ads and then we'd get it printed, and then we'd walk away with about $600 each.
There you go.
For like 3 months' work.
Yeah.
But, you know,
You
I wasn't losing money, but it was nice when it came through. But, you know, it was definitely a bit of a
passion project.
Yeah.
And then do you start to think, all right, well, this stuff I'm interested... Look, myself, I know you, and a lot of skaters and people that are interested in that culture feel a need for print media. They want that sort of stuff. And did you think, like, this is filling a gap that really is kind of disappearing, you know?
Yeah, and I also, again, going back to why I made videos in the 90s, I still firmly believed in putting my old hometown scene on the map. Mm-hmm. The imagery that was coming out of there was amazing. There were top-level pros coming out of there, still are to this day. Mm-hmm. And so I had a lot to work with, and because we were the only thing, people would be like... And we'd always... Every issue you'd have like a 6 to 8 page spread on a photographer or artist.
Yep. Which is cool to shed some light on these people that probably are overlooked.
And exactly. And they were nothing to do with skateboarding. Like Jack would get them out of his, you know, connections. The cover wasn't allowed to have a skateboarding trick on it, but it was allowed to have a skateboard on it. But the person couldn't be skating. The back cover...
These are like your rules you had for your own journal.
And then the back cover was not allowed to have an ad on the outside. So the outside back cover was just usually something random, like a photo of a cow or a dog barking or something. Yeah. Sometimes we do a wraparound cover.
Oh, yeah, that's
cool.
So,
you know, it would be the graphic on both sides. Like, I'll send you down. We've still got some back issues.
So that's almost like what we're talking about earlier off camera with the landscape books. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like having the wraparound cover, you can get that landscape vibe.
Yeah, it's just that landscape. And also, it's just basically an outside poster, you know? Yep. So you can take it off and it's a poster. Yeah. So we only did a few of them, but we normally do arbitrary colour on the back, photo on the back, kind of a skate photo on the front. But sometimes it would just be a cow on a cliff on the front, or, you know.
But it was all WA content.
All WA, yeah.
And do you feel that it might have had more legs if you let it go to a wider sort of, you know, Melbourne, Sydney, Sure. But you want to just put WA in the
We didn't need another mag over here. My friend Darren Richmond, he helped painstakingly recreate every issue in online form.
Wow.
So you could go to a website and flick through the mag virtually.
Awesome.
Like an e-zine.
Yep.
But it was our own model. It wasn't like he just ripped a plug-in off some site. It looked really good. So each issue would go up on there. We had a website, but then, you know, websites, they're hungry. And then you've got social media, and it can really turn into a big time-consuming project. So as we all got a bit busier with our lives, we just decided to put it on pause indefinitely.
And I think you said sort of 2011 when that sort of was. That's, I think, almost the same time that kind of Instagram sort of kicks off.
Yeah, exactly. So we never had a staple Instagram because it was too early. But what Instagram soon did was took out all the websites. So you had the internet came along. So pretend it's a schoolyard fight. You got the magazine versus the internet. The internet kicks the magazine world's ass, right? Then the internet, Mr. Internet is hanging out there in the lunch shed, think he's the king. And then homeboy Facebook comes along, gives him a black eye. Then Instagram just knocks the motherfucker out. And it's all over. So, yeah, to be... like I've read how the business model of skate mags like Jenkem keep it going and various mags, and they turn more into event companies. So you hold an event, and you get sponsorship through that, and
merch and that sort of thing.
Yeah, merch definitely.
But that's like musicians or anything. You're not selling units.
No.
You know, so you've got to think outside the square. You know, I think Tyler, the creator, said that he's made more money in socks than he has in music sales, you know?
Crazy.
Yeah, but you've got to think outside the square.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, merch is a huge thing. So it's funny, like you run it away from the idea of having a traditional company, like say a board company or a clothing company, you start a magazine and then you end up having to have a clothing company to support the magazine. You also need to have a clothing company to support the skateboard company now.
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah.
Yeah.
All roads lead to a clothing company.
Well, I get. Well, you got to sell products at some stage,
And they have to be good.
And people are getting more used to paying for subscriptions, whether it's an online thing or whether it's something like this podcast or whatever. But at the end of the day, you got to sell a tangible product at some stage, I think, to make money.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's just the sad reality of it.
It is. But luckily, we still have so many cool things to look at and absorb. But I have a lot of respect for all these people running these.
Yeah, and I think it's skateboarders, musicians, a lot of graffiti writer or people that are just interested in art still love that physical medium. And it's really cool that you can, like, we've been looking at books from past guests already. Like, it's so cool to look at that sort of stuff now. Like, it'd be sad that does disappear. As cool as fucking Instagram is.
Yeah, it won't disappear.
And it shouldn't.
No, it just won't. It's too... Everything comes back, and every time it comes back, it gets, like, legs that will carry it further into the future, So we're definitely... we may be coming back to a time now where people are more interested in print. The kids are more interested in seeing their analog photos on printed pages rather than on a 2-inch screen. I hope so. I love books and magazines. Yeah. There's a skate mag called Closure right now that Jamie Owens does out of the States, and he's done 6 issues. I heard about it on a podcast. Subscribed straight away. The subscription in Australia was something like $140 for 4 issues.
US?
Australian.
Oh, yeah.
Once I paid all the, shipping and all that. And I was like, damn, that's a lot. But whatever, it's going to be awesome, I could tell. And the way he does it is he keeps... The content is probably 30% 90s and 80s and 70% contemporary. And his justification of doing that, his reasoning by doing that, apart from just being a fan of those eras, is that people that are my age are more likely to pay for a magazine than a kid who can see all that stuff online.
They can't justify it. Yeah. I think that magazine might have had the feature of Steele's sticker wall on it.
It did.
Yeah.
Back cover.
Inside
back cover.
Yeah, I haven't got my hands on a copy of that yet, but I do remember him mentioning that, and I've seen it on his Instagram. Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't scan my stickers for you, Steele.
Did he ask you to?
Yeah.
He did?
There's too many.
And what, he said, hey, man, give us your whole collection and scan them for us?
Yeah, he wanted to... it was either lend them to me or scan them yourself, but I wasn't going to let them leave my house. I would have scanned them, but I just didn't get around to it. It's a lot.
Yeah, man, when I had him on this podcast, I think he said the file after he finished, he didn't even think about how he was going to export it, but it was like 11 gig. I'm pretty sure it was 11 gig. And he's like, now I don't even know how to make this into a PDF to fucking print it.
Yeah, that's just so amazing. And it's up in his shop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it in person, and I think he's a bit salty on me that I haven't gone in there. But, man, I just don't get to the city that much. But I will. Next time I'm in the city, 100%, I'll go there, check it out. It's fucking awesome.
It's in the back. Yeah, I saw it in the mag. I was like, oops. Yeah. But anyway, he looked like he had enough stickers.
He definitely had enough stickers. But it is really cool to see that people are figuring out, look, they get a subscription. They know they've got enough money in the bank that they can keep these projects going.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Exactly. And he did it as a startup, like a fundraiser, a crowdfunded.
GoFundMe, yeah.
Basically. It wasn't a GoFundMe. It was like, here's my details. This is what the mag's going to be like. Do you want to subscribe? I subscribed straight away. Get the first issue. Get to the inside back cover. He's got every subscriber's name.
Oh, that's cool.
Written, just perfect, like across the inside back cover. Yep. Like maybe 500 names, Yep. Super cool. I was like, damn, there's some heads in here. It was pretty cool seeing all the white people that had forked out.
Yeah. So with the print media and your love for that, when do you start to go, all right, I'm going to start making my own art? You've already been doing it for a while, but let's actually make some pieces. Like, let's make a body of work.
So I had National Geographics for making cards and wrapping presents with, like just adding a bear to a present or whatever, just a bit of garnish. Tend to like wrap in brown paper and then just put some image on there, and it's free and it looks nice, and you know, I loved those mags because they were as America-centric and biased as they were a window to the world, and I'd always look at them as a kid.
Even the ads were cool.
Yeah, it was kind of, you know, my little internet when I was a kid, as were skate mags.
Yeah.
And so I just had a few that I'd picked up at op shops and all that. And then while I was living on Gertrude Street, I was down in Richmond and I found this big palm tree that was out of a travel agent. It was like about 6 foot tall. And I told my flatmate I was going to collage the palm tree, and he said that I wouldn't. And I was like, I'm going to. It was already at the house, and I figured he just thought it would be sitting there. So then I collaged it with National Geographics. It didn't make a cohesive space like I try to with my pieces now, but I really went to town and cut out a lot of things. And
how did you, like, with that sort of unusual surface and shape?
So it was two-dimensional.
Okay, right.
Cut out.
I was going to say, because a palm tree's a strange
It's
shape.
a thick cardboard two-dimensional cutout.
Okay.
And covered it, and then I just started doing like smaller ones. And I was using for a cutting mat a piece of, what's that stuff, foam core.
Yeah.
And, you know, a Stanley blade. And then soon enough I was like, oh, maybe I should get one of those cutting mat things. And, you know, slowly got more serious about it. And then I was just giving them away as presents. And it just led somehow to me having a show at Lo-Fi, which is thing about having a show is you don't want to frame. I didn't want to frame everything, because if I didn't buy anything, I'd be in like massive debt. Yeah. If no one bought anything, I'd be in massive debt. So the way I framed them was I got recycled plywood, cut the ply to shape, and then I rounded the edges a bit like a skateboard.
Yeah, like so with a router.
Just with a sander, not with a router, just by hand.
Yeah, cool.
While I was doing all this, I was learning about tools as well. So I don't have a router yet, but if I did another show, I would have one for sure. But it was just kind of the thing about it. It was sanded exactly the way the edge of a skateboard is, whereas a router gives you like more of a perfect round.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's variance on the blades.
It would be,
but I wanted like a little, you know, just like that slight bulge.
And the plywood makes you feel like it's a skateboard. You're used to the ply.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a bit of a play on the graphic, and people thought they were skateboards. It was like, they're flat, but thank you.
Yeah. And
I don't have to put everything on a skateboard, but it was just a little homage, and I loved that aesthetic, you know?
Yeah.
And that was over at Lo-Fi. So the guys that own Butter have a store in Perth, soon Melbourne. Might have to cut that out. They have a store. So the guys that own Butter, they have a store in Perth called Lo-Fi, and they let me put on a show there. And it was super successful. And then I followed one up at Spare Store here, and again did really well. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And so it was nice because I was spending so much time doing it.
Yeah.
And then I was able to justify it because I was bringing a bit of cash back into the household, you know.
Yeah.
So I was able to work, you know, do regular work a few days a week, and then just dive into this collage stuff.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it because I'd spent so long looking at a screen, you know, for work, looking at my computer, and you can do so many great things with a computer, but it's so taxing on the eyeballs and the brain and the soul. And I was finding this more invigorating and just really enjoying it, and even got to a point where it was dominating my thoughts. You know, it was like, it's what I wanted to do, and that's it.
But that happens with people that have that sort of, you know, all or nothing personality.
Yeah.
I think once you find something, you know, you strike me as the kind of person that dives in pretty deep.
Totally. Yeah.
I tell you what I think is really cool about that kind of, you know, collage thing is that there's images that you'll find that would never be on the internet. They've never been scanned. They're one of a cost. And once you start chopping that up, unless someone else goes and finds that same magazine and scans and puts it on the internet, that images are one of a kind.
Yeah. And then you've chopped it up anyway.
Yeah. So someone has to find the same thing and
Yeah. And then I started off with 80s mags, and I was strictly National Geographic for the first 5 years.
You put parameters on yourself again.
You got to have rules.
You got to have rules.
I feel like without those kind of rules, I won't start anything. I need to have like can be a wide lane, but I think I need a lane.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise I'll just do doughies.
No, I think it's interesting the fact that like I would have thought of it differently. I'm a different sort of thinking person. I think where I'd be like, I'm gonna not know when it's finished, but you're like, I need this parameter to know when to start it.
Yeah, and then we'd just work with, I think it was 1940 to 1989 were my parameters.
Yeah.
And then I pulled it back to, I kind of don't really go too far into the 70s anymore. Right. I love photos and prints from the 60s.
And they kind of have a different sort of like color, sort of the way that, it is, yeah.
It changed in about, I think their printing changed in the late 70s. Because you got some late 70s ones that almost look as glossy as the 80 ones. By the late 80s, they were dismal. They're horrible. They don't even stick.
Yeah.
They're too glossy.
Too glossy.
The 60 ones are so beautiful. They're washed out.
Yeah.
Nice paper stock.
Is it like a CMYK printing sort of?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
My dots like that, but it's definitely a different approach. And then you've got the ones in the 50s that have been colorized.
Yeah.
And they look even better, you know.
Yeah.
Because someone's actually done what you're doing, but with a pen.
And they've sat there and gone, the pink needs to be pinker, the green needs to be greener. Yeah.
And I collage now. I used to just use my eyes, but now I'm kind of getting a bit older. I use I use glasses or a magnifying glass, and I'm looking at the dots. Like when I'm in looking at the mag in the magnifying glass, I can't even really, like I have to go out and like, what am I looking at here? And then you go back and you're like, right, that's that.
It's like colour half tone.
But you're actually looking at the dots.
Yeah.
The half tone dots.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. You get right in there.
And
then you like get worried about doing like your blade shifting across and you like pull back out and you're like, I don't think that 1/4 millimeter cut's going to really show up. It's going to be all right.
Yeah. I think it's awesome because it's almost like sampling in music or something. Like you're taking something that someone else has made and putting your own spin on it and making it your own, which is like fucking just a cool theory in general.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what most of the things that I've done and been interested in have involved, you know. Skateboard is sampling the street. Writing words is sampling the language and you're remixing it. And if you're going to come up with a nice new way of describing something, you've really just remixed an old sentence.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Nothing's original.
So just, you know, put it in a blender and see what comes out.
Speaking of sampling the streets, there's a few different skate spots that you've skated, and one that comes to mind is on the freeway that goes back to the city there, which is actually a huge art piece. Do you want to tell us a little bit about skating that? And it's beautifully captured by the photographer as well.
Yeah, so I was driving to Golden Beach with my ma, because we used to have a house out there. And we took the wrong turn onto is it the Ringwood bypass?
Yeah, it's like, I think it's...
we went too far on the Ringwood bypass. Yeah. And we were supposed to turn off to go towards Gippsland, and we just didn't. And so on the freeway, and I'd never seen that thing before, and I was like, I'm going to skate that. I'm going to have to skate that, because there's a bank on what I thought was a piece of cheese, but you reminded me it's a worm.
So for people that don't know, we'll just say it's on the freeway. It's a big fucking bird, a 3D bird, and a worm.
Yeah, how big's the bird? The worm's a story high.
Yeah.
So the bird's probably 4 stories high.
Yeah.
I'm just on the worm, which has got a slight embankment on it. So I often used to freeze up in a tour situation and not shoot any photos or whatever. I'd just be too in awe of everyone's talent, and sometimes have to get a sneaky photo in the mag. Shoot a photo for the article later.
Oh.
You know, say if it was a Melbourne trip, be like, hey, Gorby, can we go get the photo? Gorby being Steve Gourlay. Can we go get a photo for this article? Yep, no worries, Morgs. Where do you want to go? Send in a photo. That's awesome, Morgs. And then we left, classic Melbourne weather, one morning, went there. It was bucketing down in Fitzroy, and I was like, we won't know until we're there if it's dry or not.
Yeah, it's still like an hour away.
Yeah, so he went there. He pulls over. He took his troopy off the freeway, parked it, but he wanted to shoot it from the freeway. So he climbed back out onto the freeway with his high vis on. Wasn't on the road, he was in the emergency lane. And then I'm skating the thing. And I'm really sorry, but I forget the amazing woman's name right now that designed it. And she saw the photo and was really stoked.
Yeah.
But the freeway security weren't as happy.
Yeah. Because it's like a private road because it's the
what's it called?
EastLink,
Link
yeah.
or EastLink or whatever. So he apparently busted people for skating it before, but no one had managed to get footage or a photo on it from my understanding, because it's like you can get kicked out pretty quick. I think I was skating it for like maybe 20 minutes tops.
Yeah.
And then the best thing was the guy's like, I'm surprised you're skating this and not the giant eckies up the road. And
giant eckies?
I was like, what? He's like, yeah, there's some giant eckies up there. Kind of look like Smarties, but I think they look like eckies. And I was like, yeah, well, look, he's a photographer, I'm a skater. This is just what we do. We got this photo. And then that's one of my favourite things I've ever shot. And it was funny to see it today on the way here. But Steve, he's such a master. And with his medium format Hasselblad, we shot so many photos, all over the world, but some of the ones that we shot in Melbourne are like some of my favourite images that I've captured. Yeah. That camera is just so sharp, and they're big. They're 6x4 negs, 6x5, I think. So they can be blown up really big as well.
Do you have a print of it?
No, I don't.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when it got ran in the mag, they ran it black and white and pull these bats in the sky. Because it was the horror issue.
So they photoshopped the bats in. Oh, that's a shame.
So the actual photo is like, there's no bats, it's just a crow and a bit of cheese, or a worm, sorry.
Square worm.
Yeah.
Can you find the negative and maybe get a good print of it?
I'd like to at some point get like the negs off collage to get the prints. But I'm not going to, I don't know. I might give it to my mum or something. I'm not, maybe my daughter can have it.
Yeah. Well, man, it's definitely a cool image. And if it's one of the ones you're most proud of, why not?
Yeah, I guess so.
Take it home and hang it on the wall, dude. Aside from skating some awesome stuff around Melbourne, where is like one of your favourite places to go overseas that you'll always go back to? It doesn't matter how long you get into your skating career, you're always going to want to go and skate back there again.
Probably Glasgow, but that's not because of the quality of the spots, it's because of the grittiness of the spots and the challenge and the people. Have to say Barcelona, even though it's a cliche. Last year I skated London for a couple of weeks, and I think that London's my favourite city to skate in the world.
Really?
Yeah. Paris is also really good. I think if you're in a really good city and there's whatever kind of skate spots, that's my favourite type of city to skate.
Yeah, because you're just such a fan of skateboarding. You're so passionate about it. You can find the cool stuff out of any city.
Yeah, but the most mind-boggling geometry has to be the Spanish landscape architects come up with.
Yeah,
it's seriously everywhere. It's like, if you're a 3-year-old or a 49-year-old skateboarder, 3-year-old wanting to slide down embankments on their bum, it's just so many options.
We touched on it a bit before with Instagram, and like I kind of feel like you said that Instagram smashed Facebook, and it moved us to where we are now. Do you find it, as somebody who is, without being rude, an older skater, to get your head around this sort of stuff? Like, it's obviously a really cool way to show people you're skating, but also it's to catch people's attention, to stay on top of it. Do you find it hard to navigate that?
Well, I've kind of I go through periods where I'm really prolific on there, and then just nothing. And in the last year, we've got we've got a 1-year-old daughter right now. No one really even knows this apart from my inner crew. I haven't put my child on Instagram. But what it has done is it's taken me, I'm just like, how can I justify spending time on this right now when I could be spending time with her?
Yep.
The act of skateboarding itself, I still have to hold sacred and do because it keeps me sane. But as far as the promotion of that skateboarding, it's harder to do it at this point in time.
Yeah.
But what I really enjoyed doing with Instagram is I have all this archival video footage, and I've been putting that out, and people lose their minds over, seeing the city in 1997 or whatever.
Yeah. And the aspect ratio is good for Instagram.
It is, of the old cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So, but I think it's a lot. It's obviously a yin and yang type thing where it's evil and it's great. Evil and absolutely fantastic and life-saving in some other aspects, no doubt. But I think the hardest thing for skateboarders from my era to get their head around is putting their own stuff on there.
Yeah.
Because, we never had a trumpet to blow of our own. So.
Well, you were saying earlier that when you'd made your VHS tapes, you wouldn't give yourself the limelight, you'd give it to someone else. So
the last part.
Yeah. So now you've got to, you can show your friends and stuff, but it's predominantly a self-promotion tool.
Yeah, it is. And I will put friends on there, my archive stuff. I love doing that. It's really nice. And I love seeing I get more candid comments as well. People are like, they're either like, oh, it was you again, or, oh my God, it's Ben McLaughlin. How amazing, Yeah. And I really enjoy that. But yeah, at this point in time, it is kind of time consuming. So I haven't been doing as much. But I know that if I hadn't embraced Instagram at all and wasn't still filming and all that, I probably wouldn't be getting any free product or opportunities from my skating.
Yeah, you've just got to roll with the times.
Yeah, you got to put the work in. You got to get it out there, and then good things happen. But yeah, so I have a love-hate relationship with it, and I'm having just a bit of a lull now. But I'll probably get active over the summer, I'd say, especially because I'm filming a project now, and I generally can't film video and phone at the same time. My brain just I like to do one or the other. I like to go out with the phone or with a video camera.
Right.
But I don't like filming at the spot where I'm going to be filming video on my phone because I don't really I feel like when the video part comes out, it should be a surprise.
Yeah, okay. So when you do film video parts, they're generally like on the older style format. And is that a conscious decision because you feel like that's the real true essence of where street skating comes from?
I just think it looks better in that aspect ratio. Mm-hmm. The wider screen that you have with your standard HD it makes skateboarding look slower because there's more space on each side of the skater. So with the fisheye or the 3x4 framing that a video camera has, an old school video camera, you get it frames the skater a lot better, not as loose.
Yeah.
And that makes it look more dynamic. And I think if you're skating really big spots, HD might work. But when I'm skating, like a lot of my spots are,
Slashing
a few
around.
inches high.
Yeah.
And my friend Josh, who I film with, Josh Roberts, Domingo Video, he makes them look giant with the VX and the fisheye. So,
and get down low.
Yeah, it gets great colours. The audio is fantastic. So yeah, I prefer to film with that camera. Otherwise, I'll look down and be like, "What is that thing following me?" It's like all of a sudden you've got a new dog that you're walking. You're like, "Wait, I had this dog, like I had a Chihuahua, and now I've got a Great Dane. Like, what is going on?" It just give me a fright. Like I prefer to. That's just a part of what I'm used to seeing. It's like the black grip tape all over the board. I always have it like that. There's a VX behind me. That's just kind of what's familiar.
Well, you've come from the era where that was normal and you just said it's familiar, but do you find it interesting that now some kids are shooting like that on purpose and they're not from that era because they're just trying to pay homage? Like, it's kind of cool, I guess, to that sort of era of skateboarding.
Totally, and I think that they probably also like the aesthetic more. It definitely makes things look more dynamic. And as time goes on, we'll see the 3x4 format dominating in skateboarding again, but it might be with an HD camera.
Yeah.
Which is a lot less stressful. Josh is always like whacking the thing, like, you know, just they're so temperamental, and they break. Like a lot of people have 3 as a minimum because there's always one off getting repaired.
Yeah.
These things are ancient, and they have a hard life as filming skateboarding.
Yeah. It's awesome that you're sort of pushing 50 and you're still skating all the time, but like we touched on earlier, you still need to work, and you still, like, skating isn't the full-time job for a lot of people, especially people that are of your era. So how else do you pay the bills in this time of your skateboarding career?
I work in the art department in film and TV. Have been doing so for about 6 years.
Yep.
And basically, for those who aren't familiar with how all the myriad of positions are broken down in film, the art department are the ones that are responsible for the aesthetic. So they don't actually source the locations, but all the layering, the set decorating, the props, the painting, all of that stuff is decided by the art department. So it's basically this big conglomerate of, sometimes not so big, but it's a group of people who were skilled in very random creative endeavours, and they're kind of misfits, a bit like skateboarders, graffiti writers. So it's very entertaining bunch of people to be working around, and lots of really good souls. Like, if you go into any other department in film, you kind of run into a lot of egos, and in the art department, there's not so many.
Yeah, a lot of the other people I'd imagine would be like people that never quite made it in front of the camera, or that sort of thing, and they've ended up there. But I don't think the art department is so much that.
No, the art department's the lesser paid department, and it's they're definitely not in it as much for the. Then it's like you get people that want to be producers. They generally want to deal with money and make money, which is fine. Like I wish I did that, but it's not what I do.
That's not your passion.
So I started off just as a runner, and I was probably the oldest runner in town. But I soon moved into other positions, and I've settled down in the land of props. I'm props buying at the moment.
It's a cool job, man.
Yeah, it's really fun. Lots of op shops, lots of shopping in general, sourcing online, trying to work out how to make something if we can't buy it.
It's always different, always creative. That's sick.
It's really fun. It's very similar. Like, being in the art department in general is quite similar to skateboarding, I think, because there's often times where I'm like at a spot, it's just like that piece of metal I'm grinding is loose, and I need to stop it from flapping around, and you don't have that many tools with you, and you just look around and you find a solution, within arm's reach. Because there's a kind of an unsaid street skating etiquette that definitely doesn't apply in film. That you don't bring anything to the spot to skate. If you're going to jerry rig a ramp, you have to find that stuff there.
There, yep.
So I'm definitely all about that in skating, and I've barely ever flexed and brought things from home or whatever, sheets of wood and all that. So yeah, I just got to the art department and I was just like, oh, this is very familiar, and it's really good fun.
Yeah.
The gig at the moment's amazing though. I'm just doing 3 days, so I've got 2 days with my daughter, 2 days on the weekend with my partner and to skate, and 3 days of work.
Man, that sounds like a pretty ideal situation.
Yeah, it's pretty good. People, a 5-day week it's a lot, and in film every day's minimum 10 hours, so it adds, it's a lot of time.
Yeah, I could imagine that fucking stacks up pretty quickly. We haven't even talked about pro boards. Do you want to tell us about some of your pro boards, or some of your almost pro boards even?
Sure. So I guess that company I spoke about earlier, Q-Day, I turned pro for them in 94-ish, and then demoted myself. I left the team to go travel internationally because I knew that a potential board sponsor would be like, "Have you got a board sponsor?" I'd be like, "Yes," and they'd be like, "Oh," and walk away.
I feel like you're very polite with this stuff. A lot of people would just go, I've got this one, then the next one, but you kind of, yeah.
So I just went away. I left Australia with no board sponsor, and then that was it for the 90s. And then early 2000s, I ended up, from my Glasgow time and time in the UK, ended up writing for Blueprint, and very lucky to have had a pro model on Blueprint.
They were huge in the early 2000s there.
Yeah, they were. They did really well. They never really, they didn't do what Flip did and move to Britain. They stayed there, or what Cliche did and moved to Britain. They stayed there and just continued to film the videos there. I probably would have had a lot longer stint there if I'd moved back to the UK when I got on Blueprint, but I was already pretty happy back in Australia. So when that ended, I ended up writing for a Montreal company called Premium, turned pro for them. So there was a couple of people in the early 2000s that I turned pro for. Then I demoted myself to amateur again to ride for a friend's company called Four.
Yep.
Brett Margaritis' company. And they turned me pro in 2017. So that's that decade. I was pro once. And then now it's 2023 and I'm riding for a French brand called Magenta, who are about to give me a board.
Awesome.
Which should come out sometime in early December.
Yep.
And the project that I've been filming recently that I just talked about was with Josh Roberts is leading up to that board release. So that's been super fun.
And you've obviously had a hand in designing the graphic, or?
The graphics done by the very talented Soy Pandey, who's one of the founders of the company, and I've just left it in his hands and haven't had a look.
You haven't even seen it?
No.
Right.
So, but I've done, I did a few collage graphics when I was writing for Four.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed doing them for skateboards because of the, back to the words, aspect ratio.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to stack pages of magazines vertically. It's quite challenging, but I've worked out how to do it with a few sections. So yeah, they're really fun. And it they look good on boards, the colours and everything.
Yeah.
From the mags. And then another fun thing, aside from pro boards, that I've been able to do is every few years we do every rider for Butter that gets to do a signature clothing series. So I've put some collages on linings of jackets.
Awesome.
Here and there with their stuff. And I'm currently working on a bag for Crumpler, like a skate backpack.
Wow.
It's going to have collage lining.
Awesome.
So that's super. That was a through film. I met those guys. And then I pitched this idea to do a bunch of different bags, not just a skate one. I wanted to do a cyclist bag and a photographer's bag and a graffiti bag and pick a rider and a skater and a bike rider to do it. And they were like, well, let's just do a skate one for you.
And then we'll take it from there.
I was like, okay.
So you're going to have a pro bag.
So we're developing a bag at the moment, yeah.
That's amazing.
Which is pretty exciting. And I'll find out as to whether we can leave that in, but I'm pretty sure they'll be happy with it.
Okay, we might have to chop it out.
It's an amazing story, that company, actually. It's
Man, I think Crumpler, I've got a lot of Crumpler bags and Crumpler little satchels and stuff. They make really good products, and it's fucking, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool story the way it came about. It was just, a necessity. They just made themselves a bag, and then 2 bike crews made themselves a bag each, and everyone wanted one.
I remember probably early 2000s, they used to run a promotion, and it must have been... Hey?
The race?
No, they used to do this thing where it was around Christmas time so they could get booze for their Christmas thing, that if you gave them 2 slabs, they'd give you a small bag, and if you gave them 4 slabs, they would give you a larger bag, and that's how they'd fund their Christmas party.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah, I will have to...
Because the large bags are a decent amount of money.
Oh, yeah, we're talking...
And they've got a lifetime warranty.
$300 or something, yeah. Yeah,
But
I'll have to look up exactly what it was, but yeah.
I'm going to have to ask Dave about that. That's really funny.
Yeah, I reckon it was probably early 2000s.
And they just did one of their races again, because they used to do a courier, or a fixie race through the city. Yeah, which is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, man.
I love the idea of that.
Yeah.
A semi-illegal race.
On a bike that has no brakes. Yeah. Man, look, I think we're kind of getting to the end. We've talked about a lot of stuff. I don't know what else there is to talk about. Is there anything else I've missed?
I'm just, happy to be in the room. And there's going to be just so many layers of artwork and so many stories told in this room, and I'm very honoured to be here. Thanks for inviting me down.
Oh, for sure, man. The plywood, you'll like the plywood. There's a lot of plywood around. Makes you feel at home.
Yep. I've just got to round off those edges.
All right. Well, do you want to give us a shout out to, what you're currently doing and, what might be coming up in the near future? You mentioned the magenta thing, but is there any shout outs or anything you want to mention before we wrap it up, man?
I'd just like to thank everyone that has supported me and continues to support me. Especially right now, would love to sending love to Emily and Roma, and to everyone who supports me in any way. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it, and I'd love to get you back again. I think you'd be a great returning guest. I'd love to have you back, and we can talk more because we spoke for 2 hours, and I think there's still more stories, man. So thanks for coming.
I can't wait to see the state of this black book when I get back.
Yeah, we might be on to the second one.
Thanks for having me, man. And keep doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. Cheers.
3,000.